the start of it. It's up to it. Yeah.
Let's say that I've got 2 Chuck Norrises, or maybe it's Chuck Norri. And to that, I am going to add another 3 Chuck Norrises. So I'm add another 3 Chuck Norrises. And this might seem a little bit obvious, but how many Chuck Norrises do I now have? Well, 2 Chuck Norrises, we can represent this as literally a Chuck Norris plus a Chuck Norris. So a Chuck Norris plus another Chuck Norris. 2 Chuck Norrises, you could also do this 2 times Chuck Norris, and this is just another way of representing it.
Hi, I'm John Green. This is Crash Course World History, and today we're going to discuss, wait for it, the Mongols.
Some of the videos that we've used in our classrooms over the last year come from YouTube, Vimeo, Khan Academy.
Just to introduce some of our members, we have Katie over here and we have Corey in the back. They're also part of our team here today. So what we're trying to convey is how to implement videos into your classroom. Sometimes it's even better to make your own. You can make very tailor-made ones to any content area that you choose. A lot of the stuff that we're going to show you today is kind of the tools that we've used, the steps and thought process, as well as where we implemented it or how we did.
And we just want to remind you that we're going to show a lot of things today. We're going to tell 2 very distinct stories from a very scientific end and then from a very literary end. So we want you to keep in mind that we're going to share these resources, but we also have them collected for you. And we will give that link to you at the very end so that you can walk away with those and not just like furiously try to search for them or write them down. So don't worry, enjoy that experience. We're going to have some little chats too as well. And if you want to continue a conversation that you would like to have with us outside of this, then we can do that on Twitter. Or if you really want to do a little bit more deeper conversations, then we can give you our emails.
We have the today's meet. It's written on this slide here, but we also have it on the board. Katie will be manning it. If there is a question, a comment, anything like that, and it's like right in the moment and you don't want to forget it, like I oftentimes do, go ahead and you can jot it down on the today's meet. We will be revisiting them during our discussion before we let you guys go. So, as you know, my name is Barb Ledford, but just a little bit about me. I teach Algebra 1, and this year I'll be teaching web design in Philadelphia. I'm at a Title I charter school, which means that my kids come from some of the worst parts of Philadelphia and are usually well below the poverty line. Because it's a charter school, a lot of kids are coming from neighboring schools in all sorts of parts of the city. So I have a very diverse group of students. So it's really important to me to kind of level the playing field as far as it comes to instruction, because a lot of them have different knowledge in different parts. So here's one of the first videos that I ever created. You can kind of sort it here, but I'm also explaining it. So we were talking about inequalities. It's chapter 6, I can remember it like it was yesterday, it seems like. And you start with 1 step, then 2 steps, then 20 steps, and now they're suddenly involving multiple parts. So I was talking about and inequalities and or inequalities. And I use this in a flipped classroom design. And I'm just going to walk you through why I thought this was helpful, why it's great to use in a flipped classroom, as well as the tools that I use for it. So I have an idea now. So I knew that I was doing inequalities, and I knew that I had done and inequalities the day before, or inequalities. That's pretty much scaffolding right on top of another, right? So I used this idea of flipped classroom. Now everyone's heard it, but how do you implement it is a lot of people's questions. So the really important thing is you need to take the time to dedicate to making a lesson that's really beneficial for this classroom. So I started with a problem from the previous day, and then a new idea, my or inequalities, a slightly harder problem, and lastly, I said to my students, pause it, go back, try to figure out what the steps are, and then watch. And how I did this is I gave my kids a guided note sheet so that they were able to follow along with me, and then less and less guidance as we go on. So they were able to watch this 10-minute clip, which is a lot shorter than the homework that most teachers give with about 30 or 45 minutes. And then they would have to come back the next day already having that in place. So I had this idea, well, how do I execute it? So what you saw on the board is a Wacom bamboo board. It's a tablet. It's about the size of, slightly smaller than a piece of paper. It's connected by USB or by Bluetooth. And as you can see, it comes with a pen. This is pretty much an artist's best tool. But for people like me who stick figures is where it stops, it's really helpful for when I'm drawing math things. Because obviously I can't type, a lot of inequalities or math symbols. I can, but it'll take me 20 times longer than if I just draw them out. So this is really helpful in that case. So I have it projected onto my computer screen. So how do I get that into a film? Well, last year at the MAT program, I had the privilege of learning about TechSmith and everything that they offer. So they're an East Lansing-based company in Michigan, and they're there to help educators, in my opinion. So Camtasia is for film editing. Now, when I first saw it, it could seem really overwhelming, but once you get a hang of it, it really kind of comes second nature, adding transitions, adding effects, adding words, and all that good stuff is really helpful. But for something like this, I just needed to capture what was on my screen. So there's two things that TechSmith offers. There's Snagit, which is just screencasting. You can record your voice, you can record a small window, the whole window, a portion off to the side. What's nice is you didn't see everything that was going along on the sides, which is great. But as many of us teachers are, we only get an allotted spending in the beginning of the year. So Jing is one of their free ones. Now, it obviously doesn't offer everything that the paid ones do, but it's something to kind of get your toes wet. All right? So now it's your turn. So I've taken the time, I've created these notes, I've created a video. Now it's my student's turn. It's your turn to now watch it. And now when you come in the next day, it's your turn to facilitate a discussion. So I can pose questions and help clarify misunderstandings, but now it's your turn to help lead the discussion. And the last part of that, your turn, is, well, I made this video, why can't you? So in comes Show Me. Show Me is a free iPad application. It records, you can add pictures, you can write on it, and it's really great. It's completely free, and students under 13 can even use it because it doesn't require an email address. I just have to set up a class account, which is really easy from your end. And every time they create something and upload it, I get an email notification, and I can go ahead and watch it. So now I know that each and every one of my students knows how to do the idea that I have given to them. So just to reiterate everything that I just told you. take a minute, digest all of that, and talk to each other. So the question I pose to you, how could you use this instructional video in your content area? Now, this isn't designed just for teachers. If you're an educator, like a ET or an ed tech, how do you, or an administrator, how do you do professional development this year? And go ahead and describe maybe a specific lesson that you would consider even doing this for.
I teach English and literature. So I think this year we try to find let's just so like we're making these well, see, I've done it. Give it to them ahead of time. I flip the math based to that. You know, I watch it ahead of time. I'm really questions. And you love it. Teach it like it's not it. Yeah, I know.
So I heard a lot of great discussion. We might revisit this, but if you have a really solid idea or a question that's still lingering, that today's meet is totally still there for you to add, and Katie will be here to help us talk about it.
And I want to talk about what I'm doing in my classroom. And for me, I've been tinkering around with the idea of using instructional video in my high school English and history classes. Like maybe I could use instructional videos to show them how to format an APA paper, or maybe how to teach them a certain grammar rule. And that's something I am really hoping I can do this year now that I've kind of got my curriculum all set. I'm not working on like what I'm teaching, but how I'm teaching. But in my case, since I teach in the humanities, I usually look for videos, and I show videos that usually illuminate a concept, that will interpret a concept, and maybe help students to understand something out of a book, or for help them to understand a turn of phrase that they might not get, or metaphor. And so I look for visual and auditory things that will just work in the classroom itself. Maybe not as homework, but as something that will help start a conversation. And so I find most of my videos on YouTube, and I have found a lot of great resources like TED Ed. But if I don't find a video, I make my own. And so that's what I want to look at. I'm going to give you one specific example, and that comes from the book Slaughterhouse-Five. When I teach Slaughterhouse-Five, I have, over the last 3 years, put together a few videos that will help talk about it. Now, this could be as simple as a song being mentioned by the author, and then I take that song and I put it to some moving images, and I play that in class, and we talk about why is that song used. And not like the moving images really make it all that much different, but it does give it some context to the time. But that's something simple. The most compelling video I made based around Slaughterhouse-Five comes from a fairly famous chapter, passage from chapter 4. I'm going to read that to you real quick, just so you get an idea if you've never read Slaughterhouse-Five yourself. It goes like this. It was a movie about American bombers in the Second World War and the gallant men who flew them. Seen backwards by Billy, the main character, the story went like this. American planes full of holes and wounded men and corpses took off backwards from an airfield in England. Over France, a few German fighter planes flew at them backwards, sucked bullets and shell fragments from some of the planes and crewmen. They did the same for wrecked American bombers on the ground, and those planes flew up backwards to join formation. The formation flew backwards over a German city that was in flames. The bombers opened their bomb bay doors, exerted a miraculous magnetism, which shrunk the fires, gathered them into cylindrical steel containers, and lifted the containers into the bellies of the planes. It's one of my favorite passages, and it goes on a little bit from there, all the way back to Adam and Eve. But I love what von Magen's trying to show you. If you just imagined a bomb in reverse, it looks like you are saving people instead of killing people. And his whole book is really just anti-war on top of the anti-war messages. And so this is a very valuable passage, and some of my students can get this right away. They get the emotional context. They get like the pacifist message that's in these words. Some don't. Right? It's already a confusing book. This is just one more confusing part. So what I did was I took these words and I interpreted them into a video that I thought would better convey this idea of what war looks like in reverse. And so I'm going to show you 30 seconds of that video because it's a 5.5 minute long video. I'm going to show you 30 seconds just so you get an idea of what the whole final product looks like before I talk about how I got to it. A lot of images in there, a lot of bombs being sucked back up. And this was my final product, but it's not necessarily a unique idea. I should say that up front, that if you search for war in reverse, you will find several people's attempts at this, and I've watched probably all of them, gearing up to teach Slaughterhouse-Five, but I never found something that I was like quite happy with. Either had too low of quality, that it was grainy or whatever, or it didn't tell the story that I wanted to tell with it. And that story being like the emotional heft of this idea. Maybe it didn't have to be a literal interpretation of his words, but it could embody them. So I'm going to talk about my process to get to this. And that begins first with finding videos. So I scoured the internet looking for videos, and I watched a lot of American military propaganda films from the 1940s. And I learned a lot about the times. I learned a lot about the campaigns that happened during that. Some of them were connected to these videos. And eventually I found a channel that I really liked that had public domain, archive footage of these propaganda films that I watched then, and I kept track of, oh, that would look interesting if that was in reverse. Always looking for some of this. And the funny thing is, when I'm watching these videos, they are like exactly like what Vonnegut said. They're like rah, rah, victory through total annihilation. Like every bomb that's being dropped is a celebration in these videos. And so it's just knowing that context in my head what was interesting. And I searched through YouTube to get these using the HD filter. I only ever show HD videos that I find on YouTube. If it's not in HD, I just don't show it. I just don't trust it because I believe that the people who put things on HD on YouTube are more professional or at least have some thought about quality in mind. And so that's how I found these, though they're not, they're from the 40s, so they're not going to be like supreme quality. They are the best that I could get. And so I collected my videos, but I still had a few things I needed to do in that, which is, one, I needed to save those videos to my computer, which is not technically legal in any way. But as a teacher, I know that I have fair use in my classroom. That when I want to show a video, I usually just download it so I don't have to show ads and comments. And I restrict that to my classroom. I know that I have that on myself. But when I need to make videos like this and I'm remixing things together, I go to places like keepvid.com. There's also a sister site which is, and you can download audio as well. And KeyVid.com will let me download this video in many different formats, many different conversions, but the one that I usually go with is the MP4 at the highest resolution. And that's probably the most important thing, because if you search for something in HD, but you still download it at a lower quality, it defeats the purpose. So when you're looking for videos, and maybe this doesn't mean a lot to you right now, maybe you don't make a lot, even if you make something on Camtasia or Snagit and you want to export it, you want to export it at 720 or 1080. And that goes along with like your HD TVs. You have a 1080p HD TV or something like that. That's the HD quality numbers. So now I have all of these videos downloaded. The thing was, I needed to reverse all those videos, or you know what, that's my video. If they're not in reverse, it doesn't make any sense. And even moderately priced video editing software like Camtasia does not have the ability to reverse footage. You have to get like Final Cut Pro or Adobe Premiere in order to do that. So I scoured the internet looking for that thing that will reverse my footage, and you know what? I found an open source program that only exists to reverse footage. And because it's so limited, it was very easy to use. Because that's all I had to do. Upload it, reverse it, it's good. And so I did that with all of those videos that I downloaded from YouTube. And it was mainly easy, though everything was in French. Directions, website, all that kind of stuff. But again, it was just 2 buttons. I thought I could figure it out myself. And I got this from a website called SourceForge. And I want you to know, don't be limited. If you have an idea, like me, I was like, I need to reverse this. It just won't work. How do I do this? Don't give up on that idea if it's not available to you in Camtasia. There are other things that will allow you to make the video that you want to make. And SourceForge is a place where you can get a lot of open source software. I have things on my computer that replace Photoshop and replace Illustrator, and they work just as well. Or I know a lot of teachers like Audacity to edit audio, and that's where you'll find Audacity as well. So that's another recommendation for me to you. Don't just give up if you don't have the right tools. There's something there for you on the internet. When I had everything together, everything was reversed, then it came time to edit those together. And I was working before Camtasia. This was 2 years ago I made it. So I used Windows Movie Maker. And even though it was really limited in its tools, it did exactly what I needed it to do. I could edit something. I could throw a bunch of clips in, I could set it to music, and I could cut those up. That's all I needed it to do. So that's what my process was like, and this was a long process. If you've never tried to really edit something and edit it well, and believe me, I took a bunch of videos, I chopped them all up, and I threw them together, and to put them in the right order, it took a long time. And if you're not up for that, you need to set aside some time. Maybe you make this video over summer break instead of doing it during the school year. And that's what I did. I had to have that time in order to do that, and I edited it down where I thought like, oh, this would tell a really good narrative from beginning to end. And I want you to remember that even Movie Maker and iMovie can make really compelling videos as long as you don't use the default settings and fonts. They can do what you want them to do, but I don't know how many movies or videos I've seen on YouTube that begin with the same font on iMovie, Gil Sans. Seriously, you know it's an iMovie movie when it has that exact same font. So if you just replace that font, you have something that's different and more unique. When it came time to put it together, I needed to search for a song. And usually what I do is I open up my iTunes, I filter it so I can see how long the songs are that I have, and I have a lot of songs. So I looked for something about 5.5 minutes, and I stumbled upon Arcade Fire's Wake Up. Now, it was the length of the song that got me to it, but when I re-listened to the song, and I heard the lyrics, and I heard the tonal shifts in the song, it made so much sense in context. Like lyrics like, we're just a million little gods causing rainstorms, turning everything good thing to rust. When the reaper, he reaches out and touches my hand. Slaughterhouse 5 is all about death, dying, destruction. And even though I might not have like thought about it like intently, like, oh, I'm going to use this because it works, it just worked. And that was happenstance, and it was a very happy happenstance. And so that made context for my video, and it made it more memorable to the themes of the book, which is where I want to stop and say something about copyright, just to cover my butt. That the videos I used were all public domain, but Arcade Fire sure wasn't. And as a teacher, I understand that there are copyright laws and that I have a little leeway. And the Supreme Court says that using non-Creative Commons video and audio is only justifiable when the final product is transformative. If I've done enough to turn that original product and make it something different. And even then, it shouldn't be shared outside the classroom, legally speaking. I share it in my class, and it's on my YouTube channel, along with the other videos I've made. And I acknowledge that I have third-party content on my videos, and in exchange for that, they advertise the song, and they put an ad in my video that will pop up. I acknowledge it, I click a little button, yes. A little button, yes. I didn't do somebody else's stuff. And what's nice is YouTube is really getting into the game of helping you with this, where if you have a YouTube account, they have a whole library of songs that you can download for free. Whole album of sound effects as well that you can download for free. So they're opening that up to you, and it's in your profile on YouTube. It's very hard to get at, like most things on YouTube. But once I got to that point, then I was kind of done. I had to move things around once I got the music in, because, and I cannot stress this enough, it is so important when you edit together a video and like an edit happens right on a beat in the music. Because if you just wash over that beat and if you don't like really pay attention to what's going on in the music, it will really affect how you respond to the editing of the video. Like in the clip I showed you, when that thing just explodes right at that moment, I wanted it to happen then, because that made a connection. So in the end, the editing is what takes the longest, but it's really what's the most important. It's what they're seeing. The music, that gives them an emotional connection to the video that they're watching, something that they couldn't really get, maybe even just by reading it. And then the story is what's the most important. That I told a story with my video, that I set out to tell a story. And the video begins with the words, the end, and it ends with a plane flying backwards out of Germany. And I wanted that from the beginning, because I knew in my classroom I wanted my students to understand this as a story. He's telling you something with these words. I want you to visualize this and see what he's trying to do with it. And that's probably my final note, which is, if you're not telling an interesting story with a video, then don't make that video. If it's just a collection of random images set to music, it's not something that's probably valuable. Even the video I made for the very beginning of this session had some sort of story to it, even if it wasn't like truly detailed. It had a purpose. And as always, these kinds of videos should be used as conversation starters. Right? It's not something to show and then just move on from. We have whole hour conversations about things like this. And we can talk about themes and symbols in ways that we could never do before I made this video. Because they can finally see it and they can finally get under their skin. So, 2 more minutes. I would like for you to think about, especially since mine's a little different from Barb's, maybe it's not something that you really thought all that much about doing in your classroom. I would like you to think about what are the challenges and affordances of doing video like what I have done. Because I know there's probably a lot of challenges, but there's also a lot of rewards. And then also, how could you use this in your content area? Because I have ideas in mind for science and teaching French, but I wonder if you do too. So again, we got 2 minutes, and put something up on today's meet. I'll be around, you can ask me questions.
Done. And then you don't have to do that, and then you add it to yeah. These are your best. I feel like that makes something I'm scared to ask you to try to make something.
So there's something like so it's kind of off and on. It's cool.
I know. Oh, yeah. For me, it's actually just basically just and so learning style. That's true.
Taylor, and so that was challenging, but I was able to do something, so I made myself run it and maybe yeah, they took
now it's kind of your turn to talk. So now it's kind of your turn to talk. Katie has some questions from the, let's not sit back. So Katie has some questions from today's meet, but I wanted to open it up to the floor first. If anyone had any lingering questions right now. All right, Katie.
I don't want to double up, but we'll see what you
Do you have, I mean, I don't work with video much. Do you get better at it? It just seems to take so long to do all that editing.
It's like anything else with practice, it just comes second nature. I know, especially last summer, I had never even opened iMovie or any sort of film editing software, and that was a year ago. And now it's kind of like a routine. It's something that my kids can kind of expect every month that they're going to get something from me. And it's really great because when I'm absent, there's no excuse as to why something can't get done. Because in my sickness, I can really quickly screencast something, send it out to their emails, and they have something to do the next day. So it just becomes second nature over time.
The harder stuff that takes a bit of a learning curve. Like in college, I tried using Final Cut Pro, and I did it. But it was I had to use a manual by my side the entire time. Whereas Camtasia is a nice step down from that, and like Movie Maker is just like child's play. Because it's really just drag and drop, and you can't really complicate it much. Which is, so if you want to do a tiered system, start off with it. But like I said, like you can use any of these tools and make a really good video. It just depends on what you want to do. And even then, there are ways around it.
There's really a lot of supports online, you know, going and finding the tutorials, and there's tons of stuff for Camtasia, I'm sure for other software programs, but there are a lot of great short tutorials just to help you get, and anytime I would run into a problem with Camtasia, I would be able to Google that issue and find a quick little tutorial to help me get through it.
Or tweet at them because they're very
Yeah.
They actually respond to tweets.
Go ahead.
How often are you guys showing videos in your class?
I know for me, it's at least like once or twice a month that they can kind of expect it. It's not something that I have every day, but if there's something that I feel like I can easily scaffold, or if it's something that's definitely a lot more difficult. I find that if it's a really difficult topic, making a video is just another resource. And it's great for my ELL, which is my English language learners, and my special ed kids, because now they have something that they can go back and rewatch, and go back and rewatch. And, you know, because sometimes they don't always feel confident. I mean, you obviously want to have a warm atmosphere, but if they're not confident and they just want to do something off to themselves, it's really helpful in that sense.
For me, mine's more like based on the content. So if I feel like, I probably have like 3 or 4 videos I've made per unit, but I probably have more videos other people have made for those units.
Okay.
I mean, I'm in my English class, my world history class, I have to show them something in world history. Like I have to show an exploration of like a church or something. So I use a lot of things that other people have done that I can't quite do myself, though I'm kind of playing around with the idea of actually filming things myself now. But I show a lot of videos, maybe not every single day, but enough to supplement the visual things that I think they need.
I guess it's probably more towards you assign it for homework, right? And they do up their note sheet. So what happens when they either don't have a computer, because I had a few that did that, or, oh, the internet was down. Well, if it really was down, you can't fault them for it. So how do you get around that?
So, I have this problem especially. I can tell you most of my students, if not all of them, do not have internet access or even a computer at home. They don't really have means to it. So I'm the kind of teacher that unfortunately is the last one out and the first one in the morning, so I always offer, just come by after school, it's a 10-minute video, or come before school, it's a 10-minute video. But for that kid that's stubborn, that loves doing their homework, so the idea behind the whole flipped classroom is that I can give students more one-on-one time. It frees up me speaking in front of them to give them that individualized attention. If I have a group of students that don't do it, well then, all right, go out in the hallway, watch the video while we're having our discussion for clarifying misunderstandings. When you come back, I'll work with you individually. But now that takes away the one-on-one time. But you gotta be flexible as a teacher. I'm sure all of you are aware of it, and that's kind of where I'm at. I don't have an answer for you, but that's the best one.
So your students have access to laptops or something when they're there?
Yes, so there's plenty of technology. There's a really small computer lab, and we have 16 iPads. I also have a bunch of kids that if they want, I can just project it onto the screen and they can watch it right before they hop on the bus home.
I think one thing you find too with flipped classroom is that in a traditional classroom, all 25 or 30 or 12 of your kids are doing the exact same thing at the exact same time. And so there is a little bit of a learning curve from a management perspective, is that you've got groups of kids working kind of at different paces and at different points. And you kind of learn to just roll with it, and you're not tied into doing one thing necessarily the whole time you're in class. You're roving, answering questions. If they get off task, you're able to just get them back on task. But it is a different management system from having all the kids sitting there doing the same thing at the same time. And I think that's just something that you kind of figure out as you're going.
We have time for one more question.
Just to say, one thing I did this year was I sent stuff home on rewriting the DVDs or USB keys, or if they had an iPod, they just didn't have internet access, so they come in, put the videos on whatever device they had and take it home. They had the device, but they didn't have access to internet because they were in carers or minors or wherever, or mom and dad wouldn't have to use it at home, or they didn't have it at home. But they could bring in a device and take it.
Thank you guys for coming. We want to draw your attention to 2 links up here. This junk link will take you to our page on the Grades 14 page. It has a embedded thing link in it. So if you go to our page, you'll find that embedded thing link. There are little dots on Barb's head and on her welcome bamboo and all those things where you can go to SourceForge, go to our channels. If you want to see any of the videos we've done before, my channel, Barb's channel, you can watch our other videos and see what other things that we're kind of tinkering with as well.
And then underneath, you guys should have seen this before, and if you haven't, this is our wonderful survey. We want feedback. As a teacher, you always love to hear good things, bad things, and everything in between, and reflect and make it better next time. So we really appreciate that time. Dan and I will be circling around, and like we said, both of us are on Twitter, so feel free to just say, hey, what's up? No question is a small question. So thank you guys.
We'll be transitioning in like 2 minutes.